Good morning. Good morning. It's Pause with Elizabeth Eleanor. And today we're actually talking about a really hot topic. We're talking about whether to stay or go in a relationship because it's a really tricky question, and one that takes a lot of time to really process. And there's so many different layers. So we've brought a beautiful woman on. This is Nicole. In this part of the series, I haven't had a guest before, so this is the first time in this series that we've got a guest. So our beautiful Nicole Carney, who's coming in from New York. So the Zoom and the challenges with the internet might play a bit of a part, but we'll see how we go. So I'd love for you to say in the chat where you're watching from and how you're going today. And Nicole, I would love for you to share who you are and why we should listen to you.
Sounds great. I am honored to be with all of you today. It is evening for me. It is morning for you. This is going to be a great way to either end your day or start your morning. As Elizabeth said, my name is Nicole. I am a marriage coach and I specialize in helping strong women to create a happy, healthy relationship after infidelity without endless couples therapy, using emotionally intelligent energetics. And the reason why I do this is because once upon a time, my husband and I actually went through this ourselves. And so we have managed to find our way through infidelity, through all of the sticky parts of rebuilding trust and connection and intimacy. And we've been able to build a really beautiful relationship. It's been 9 years since that happened. We actually just celebrated our 15-year dating anniversary, and we'll be married for 10 years come September. So we've got some experience on our side.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a big part of it, right? Is knowing the journey all the way through, so that you can share with others being able to get to the other side. So let's dive straight in and like how how did that all feel, and like tell us all the things, like what it was like going through that experience, and especially because you were relatively new in the relationship, right?
Yeah. So my husband had an emotional affair. We were about a year into marriage, just a little bit under. I was shocked. It was devastating. I didn't see it coming, not for a mile. And it was really, really challenging. I was like 25, 26 at the time. And so we got together young. We got married around at 25, 26. And so, you know, I just didn't have a whole lot of coping skills the time. I didn't really know what was needed, how much transparency was needed. I didn't know anything about feeling my feelings. And so we actually I took a couple weeks to really just be pissed and to like just, I couldn't even be in the same room as him. Um but then I was just like, you know what? Like I'm going to stay and we're going to work this out. He's never going to do this again or I'm gone. Um, and I was actually so ashamed at the time that we didn't tell anyone about it. We didn't talk about it for 7 years. And then we opened up Pandora's box. And that's when we really started to heal, when we really started to get to the root of the issues and allowed everything that was under the surface to be exposed and to look at it and to talk about it and to do the work that was necessary in order to have a happy, healthy relationship.
Which is so important, right? Because it's like a wound that festers if
Yeah.
it's not sorted out and looked after and dug into, and like the healing just doesn't, like it's under the skin and it stays there. So 7 years, what, like in that time frame, how did you navigate that?
Not very gracefully. We made a lot of mistakes, Elizabeth. Like, honestly, we made a lot of mistakes. And, something that I've come to realize as I've helped women, as I've talked to a lot of women, as I've talked to men who have done this, I don't give a whole lot of credit to attachment style, but something that is pretty obvious and evident is that a lot of people who cheat tend to have an avoidant attachment. And so they're avoidant by their personality. They express their emotions too well. And so, although I definitely required more transparency and communication and, you know, didn't tolerate like lies like, hello, I'm having an emotional affair, I didn't really know how to ask for what I wanted and needed because I didn't really even know because I wasn't super in touch with my emotions either. And so there was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of anger, and I blame myself for a lot of this. And that wasn't, I just I didn't have the outside support in order to help me understand that it wasn't about me. And so it was really sticky. It was really messy. We had two kids, 2 years apart, which, like, do not recommend. But it's not a great way to save your marriage. But it was definitely rough. It was a very much like survival mode kind of time.
Yeah. And that's I'll just share to all the women that are watching, because we have got a few women on. If you've got any questions that you would like answered by Nicole through the process, or you want to chime in with your own experience, please do so in the chat. We'd love to have you connecting in and being part of the conversation. Um, I mean, it's so common though, right? Like in the middle of dealing with all the emotions and being young, we don't have that emotional maturity to, be able to deal with this sort of stuff. And there's generally no guidance from our parents either, because, the generation prior, they did sweep it under the rug, right? There was usually don't talk about it and just stay. But we also find that most of the time, like in the middle of all of that, you've got kids, and all of a sudden you're a mum and you're a dad and you're dealing with, the lives of someone else. Like it just gets so, all of the different layers to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does get complicated because, you know, do you stay for the kids? Do you not stay for the kids? How do you break it to your kids why you're separating if you choose to do so? And so it's a really complicated process. It can be a really complicated process. And the less willing you are to, kind of like look at what your responsibility is and what their responsibility is and what your values are, the harder it becomes. But when you really dial into that, when you dial into what's your responsibility, what is his responsibility, what do you want as a family, what's important to you as a parent, and as a partner, then it starts to become a little bit more straightforward, I think.
Mm. And so Pamela's asked here, she'd like some more information on avoidance attachment um, style. So can you just
Yeah,
share
I
a little
actually
bit
don't have a
more
whole lot.
about
I
that?
don't. Yeah, I'll share what I know about it. Absolutely. So, the attachment theory is really, it's dictated by our caregivers, who how we attach to our caregivers early at birth. Okay, and so it's based on how responsive your parents were, how responsive your caregivers were when you were a baby, when you were an infant. How well were your needs met? And so when you have awesome parents who attention to you, who gave you the and support, who fed you, who kept you warm, who really attended to you, it's much easier to form a secure attachment style. But on the other hand, sometimes our parents maybe aren't quite as attentive, and this isn't necessarily, and I like to be really cautious with this because this doesn't mean that they're bad parents, because I think that there are very few parents who have the intention of doing harm, but it's usually that they are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have at that time. And so maybe they were having a hard time really giving you everything that you needed. And so they weren't super responsive to your cries. They weren't super responsive to feeding you as soon as you wanted, as soon as you needed. They weren't, maybe you weren't properly clothed and given everything that you needed as a young child. And this continues into like toddlerhood and like young childhood too. Maybe you were told that your feelings were too big, or you were dismissed and you said, be seen, not heard. Um, then we can start to form more of an insecure attachment where you could be anxious, you could be avoidant, you could be dismissive. And so these are just different types of attachments that we create in childhood that can impact our relationships as we get older if we don't address these patterns and behaviors. And this is a beautiful thing, is that all patterns and behaviors can be changed when we choose to do so.
Yeah. But that, there's a level of consciousness with that, right? Because I mean
Yeah,
that ties into the sort of work that I do where we're conditioned so much in those early, from 0 to 7, um, that now becomes unconscious behaviors. And so we've got these
absolutely.
sort of, yeah, silent behaviors happening, or, belief systems or whatever churning away in the background, and you're not even aware of it unless, and then, something like this happens. Um, and, it's a powerful thing to have two people willing to work through all of that. So from your husband's point of view, um, you know, what was it like for the two of you? Obviously you love each other dearly, right? To have
Yeah.
stayed and to commit to each other. So what was it like in the messy middle? Were you both on board with this?
Yeah, he wanted to stay. He had no intentions of leaving. He had no intentions of, turning this emotion, the conversations that they were having into anything more. That was never, ever his goal. He never was trying to hurt me. He was having a little bit of an
Mm,
identity crisis, and he totally sucked at communicating his feelings. He didn't know how to talk about that at all. And he had gone through kind of a series of things that he was pretty emasculated. He was, feeling pretty crappy about himself. And so we were both on board with staying. Um, and it was, a little bit, it was a dance, like it was a push and pull, and so
mm,
he never, I would, I like to say that he was very tolerant of like a lot of my moods or my big feelings or whatever. Um, and that we didn't talk about it, but he also definitely had it in the back of his mind of like the remorse of doing something that hurt me so much. And so, yes, definitely was something that he wanted to stay. He wanted to make things work. He was very, very regretful of what he did. Um, and when I brought it back up after it had been such a long time, it was challenging. It was like experiencing it all over again, almost like the discovery of it and just the
mm.
powerful emotions. And he tells me that he's grateful that I stayed every single day. He is grateful that I stayed, and that I've been willing to work through this. I've been willing to look past this. I've been willing to learn how to trust and open up myself again after all of that.
And so when it comes to, because I know that you know, this is the type of work you do to support other women go through this experience. And I'll ask you a little bit about that in a minute, but when, that those moments of, am I staying or am I going? Like, how do you navigate that? Like, what are some tips for someone that might be going through something, like I mean, because this can be in, not just in a relationship with your husband, this can be in any relationship, the same sort of process works regardless of whether it's a friend or a, you know, partner or whatever. So how do
Yeah,
you navigate
I
that
love
sort
this.
of thing?
I love this question because it requires some pretty hefty like patience and understanding and willingness to be uncomfortable for a little bit of time, maybe. Um, and compassion. Like, the compassion is so necessary because we're humans. People make mistakes. People
Yeah.
make have
Yeah.
they make bad
Yeah.
decisions. We do things to hurt other people without trying to, right? And so it's so important just to be willing to be honest with yourself. And it's kind of a matter of asking yourself some higher and better questions, and also just leaving space. Like, I cannot stress this enough. We make so many assumptions, and we take things very personally. And so it's a balance between, like, okay, I don't want to compromise my integrity and my morals and my ethics. And at the same time, I want to give the benefit of the doubt. I want to give this person a chance. I want to understand where they're coming from and give them a chance to speak for themselves. Because we don't know unless we ask. We don't know unless we, try to understand and leave space for someone to be honest and vulnerable back with us.
Yeah, so true. And that's often that downfall, right? Because if you're not willing to be open to um to go through the ebbs and flows and to being transparent and vulnerable and all of the things yourself, then if you're just stuck in this person's hurt me and that's it, and you're not willing to do the work yourself, then it's not going to go anywhere, right? And that's so many women, or relationships get stuck in that, where something like this happens, they make the choice to stay, but then it's this traumatic 10 years instead of, like peeling off the layers, and they're then stuck in a relationship that's got way more, um, mud over the top of this one, seed, and nothing can grow, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And, I think that a lot of women, this is probably rooted in an unconscious belief when we don't fully question it. And when our partners are maybe a little bit defensive over what has happened, which is pretty normal because it's hard to face the consequences of your actions. Let's be real here. We can have this unconscious belief that we're not worthy, that maybe we maybe we deserve to be cheated on. Maybe it was our fault. And we don't actually believe that we are worthy of being loved, cherished, adored, treated with respect, treated as if we're precious and we're so worthy. And so we can have that subconscious programming running, and we don't question it because it's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to have the conversation of, like, I don't think I can stay. And we don't want to be the person who breaks things up. We don't want to be the person who splits up the family. And so it's a heavy weight.
Mm. Yeah, and was there any, like, have you had to navigate that with any women that you've worked with? Like,
Yeah,
having to go to
yeah.
that space of,
We
yeah.
do have these conversations. We actually have these conversations, like, openly inside of my community, because and also in my DMs as well. It is this very fine balance of knowing what you're worth, knowing what you are willing to tolerate, knowing where your standards and your boundaries are, and also leaving space for your partner to rise to the occasion, to take responsibility for themselves, to, become the more evolved, divine person that they can possibly be. And yeah, there's a lot of conversation about, like, why are we staying? Why are we staying? What is so important? And understanding that, like, however you feel about your decision to stay, if you're staying because you feel like you have to, your kids are going to know that. Your kids are they're going to feel it energetically, and it is going to come off on them energetically, whether you say anything at all or not. If you wait and you split after they're out of school and they're off on their own, they're still going to know. And so we have these
Yeah.
sticky conversations about why we stay. And it's okay. Like I don't blame anyone. I don't shame anyone for their decisions because it has to sit right with you ultimately. But part of like part of my goal is to help to build women up to the point where they can make an empowered decision and they can put themselves first, knowing that like they're a role model, right? They're a role model and they are either saying outwardly or just by their actions how a woman should be treated in her relationship. And so that is our responsibility, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It is our responsibility, right? Like to understand um to understand how we want to be treated and then be able to communicate that to those that are around us, like, and that can be the bit that can be tricky is, like you find yourself in a place where you want to be treated a certain way, but a lot of women find it challenging to actually be able to express that because, again, we're being conditioned to be the good girl or whatever. And so we don't necessarily have that voice. And so that's, building that up. And so can you tell us a little bit about your community, your Facebook? Because I know on TikTok, you have started talking more to the men in situations like this than you
Yes.
do women. But can you tell us a little bit about how you work, where people can find you, all of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on TikTok. Um, I have different handles on different accounts, so I'm gonna have to double check. I believe I'm at happily ever after coach underscore in between the words. And so I do talk to men on there because I really truly believe in my heart of hearts that some men just make a really selfish decision that they will never do again and that they are willing to do whatever it takes to win their wife's heart back and to make things right. And so I speak to them and I hope to give them some support and some guidance of like, fellas, this is what you say, this is what you do in order to, get her to open up again. On Facebook here, my personal profile is a great way to get in touch with me. I'm very responsive to DMs, but my community is Happily Ever After Infidelity Support Group for Women. And so this is specifically for women who are staying, or maybe they just haven't quite made the decision to stay or go yet. And so it's a really great group that you can come in, you can share your story, you can get support. People love to like, they're starting to really support one another in the comments. And it's just a really great place to be open and honest about what you're going through because I don't hold anything back. I don't hold much back at all. And I share very candidly about my experience as well as what it takes to get the happy, healthy relationship that you do deserve.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so needed, right? To be able to have these conversations in a place where you are loved and supported and people may have been going through the same experience. So, you don't feel alone because that can often happen in these situations, right?
It's like the first thing that people say often is like, leave them. Once a cheater, always a cheater. It's not worth staying. And so, yeah, like this community is very specifically meant to not show judgment. And instead, we ask, like, what kind of support do you need around this? We're not going to suggest that you leave unless this is what you're desiring and you're looking for advice and guidance on how to do so. And so, that is 100% the intention is to have a supportive place where like you can hang your shame on a little hook and you can put it aside for the day and just say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want, and I am okay to make this decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, ladies, anyone that's watching and wants to put their 2 cents in, feel free to put so in the comments. Tag Nicole if you want to ask any particular questions to Nicole. Um, but we would love to hear your opinion as well. Or, even if you feel comfortable enough to share any experiences that you've had yourself, with anything that you feel you know, it might not even be that someone has cheated on you. It might be some other sort of experience where you haven't felt seen, heard, and validated in a relationship. So, you know, throw in your comments, and we'd love to have a conversation discussion. Both Nicole and I will be back in and look at what's going on in the thread so that we can have those deep dives with anyone who's interested. And if anyone wants to reach out to Nicole, so you can just DM in the personal page. Is there
Yep.
is there anything in particular that you would love to finish, you know, like just some tips and advice that you would love to share with anyone that may be going through something?
Yes, absolutely. Um, be really willing to listen and to ask some uncomfortable questions, because we don't need to be perfect in order to have a perfect for us relationship. What is probably the biggest key is the willingness to try. It's the willingness to put in the effort. And so, if that exists in the marriage and there is action there to back up the words, it's okay to have hope. And so I really encourage women to pay attention to actions over words, and to be as open-minded as possible in order to navigate this with, grace and understanding for both of you.
Yeah, so true. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, Nicole. It was so nice. And on Zoom, I've had it been going a bit wobbly, but I've been watching the Facebook Live and it's going well. So it's nice to know that we can do the two at the same
Yeah.
time. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Ladies, anyone that would love to reach out, get in contact with Nicole. And I'd love to hear your comments in the chat below. So take care and we'll catch you soon.